Hello and welcome to Clawful Evil Probable Claws, a show where we discuss Wildbow's most guillotine-filled work. I'm your very villainous hostess, Vice Versailles.
And I'm your conniving hostess, Kipos. In this debriefing, we're covering Chapter 5 of Arc 2, Retraction, and Chapter 1 of Arc 3, Scrape.
My goodness, I didn't expect to read that trap. I was not ready for multiple people to be split in half via a garage door, and I am now much more intimidated by garage doors in general.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, I know, I have known of the great power of garage door springs, and of springs in general for quite a while. So it's always good to be very, very hesitant of any spring, realistically.
Okay, I'm never going to look at a slinky the same way.
You shouldn't. But yeah, I think the most fucked thing about that was the dude that was still alive while being caught on it. And it's like, he's almost bisected and it's just like caught in his pelvis,
Yeah, but I guess it just sort of stymied the blood flow and all the organs stayed up in there and just kind of stuck around for a little longer. Wow, fantastic. I'm so glad. Really, really establishing how bodies are going to work in this setting.
Yeah, very, very brutal. I think these chapters, well, not these chapters, but like chapter 2.6 specifically is a great reminder of like Wildbow doing action scenes because, yeah, I mean, there's like a lot of it that there's not like much for us to talk about in a sense because it's like, yeah, this is really cool action.
I mean, we could get into like a structural analysis of like, how do you give the impression of someone being distracted by their pain? You have time skips. How do you give the impression of a frenetic pace of alarming action? Well, you have short sentences and things that move very quickly in paragraphing. But I'm not so certain that anyone's here for craft of writing precisely. We're much more of the plot, character, and themes analysis.
But I mean, the action was fantastic. And the guillotine was fucked.
Haunting. I am now going to avoid garages, I think. I don't... every time I see a sliding door, I'm going to be looking for a projectile cable to split me in two.
I mean, Mia would be so proud. Like, you should be that paranoid.
Yeah, you know, I'd be honored to be that completely freaked out at all times.
I think if anything, if there's anything we've learned from this story, it's don't go around opening car boots and don't go around opening garage doors. Like,
never let the sky
simple.
see you. Any flying black object is probably a drone. Oh, what else is there? You were raised by the people that kidnapped you. So sorry to let you know.
Yeah, but they do love you.
That's unquestionable.
But your original parents are still looking. Well, the less shit one of them is. So we're learning a lot from this story, really. And I guess speaking of, should we get out into our chapter summaries?
Absolutely.
All right, so in 2.6, Carson has been shot. We follow as Highland and the injured Carson work together to take out the gang members that attacked and kill off Drone Guy 2.0, who is now a woman. Based as hell. They then burn down the bunker, taking their prisoners to a new and worse location. Carson goes home to be offered breakfast by his most gracious host, Davy.
Oh, what an absolute sweet thing for Carson to be coming home to his darling partner in crime.
It was so wholesome, and like the way that it was revealed with like offering him breakfast, and it's like, oh, that's nice. And then it's like the next paragraph, like the next sentence is like, that was not Mia's voice. And it's like, oh God.
Things you can only do in a text medium.
Yeah. So good.
And in 3.1, Geo, as she calls herself, is amazed and terrified by Mia's elite hacking skills. After confirming that Santa Claus has retired from gift-giving and chosen violence, Mia establishes that Valentina is her daughter, which, after a proper mum hug, is all right by her. After a quick nap, Valentina is given a rude awakening by her fictional dad invading her home Ripley's reading nook saves the day, and after some creative reinterpretation of the truth by Carson, the parents are taken away to work for the kitchen, leaving Valentina to look after her two new little siblings.
And there was so much good to dig into 3.1. I know I wasn't alone in like finishing chapter 2.6 and being like, okay, that's the end of the arc. Like that's the perfect place to leave this Carson arc. And, you know, kind of wondering where we'd go. And I was kind of hopeful. I was hopeful that we'd get this Valentina perspective, and everything I wanted so far and more. Like perfect. Yeah.
This is now the second time to memory. I think it was 2.2 that had the same format where we had a flashback to Mia as our guy in the chair, giving our character input from the past, a bit of a flash backward. And because of how it was staged, I briefly thought that Mia had had enough rest and that she might have like had time to recover. And she didn't.
That's crazy.
Valentina has this moment where she's like, is Mia playing up like how affected she is? And it's not that at all. She's just stopped putting in the effort to appear composed like she has been for her kids. And it's working to her advantage. But I genuinely had this moment when reading 2.6 where, like, with the Davy reveal, where I was like, oh, of course that it was Davy that caught Mia, because that explains how this whole, like, last-second operation has happened. Like, why Moses is here. Like, it was entirely organized by Davy, with Mia in the room providing the vector to control Carson. And it turns out I was wrong. She just did that despite having a, like, mind-splitting headache and not enough time to recover. And that's heartbreaking, but it's very impressive. And as far as being as far as going into this sort of versus arc where Carson and Mia will be working for the kitchen, I'm interested to see how much Mia plays up her weaknesses or allows them to get the best of her, because we see what happens when she tries. She can pull this out of a hat. But maybe the advantages that Valentina and the team at the new hostage house will have is just Mia sabotaging herself.
Yeah, well, I mean, we know how close she is, like, just temporarily to, like, a breakdown. Like, she just had one, like, could barely communicate. Yeah, could barely speak at all. And, like, she's kind of just pulled herself out of that to kind of run this operation. And now, like, when she doesn't have that, like, need to run this operation, I feel like she's going to basically be in a fucking coma for the next, like, 3 days or something.
There's this phrase that I've really liked using to describe my own relationship with pain. I have a body that doesn't work perfectly and a couple of persistent injuries. And I really like the phrase eggshell fine, where you're operating okay and you can handle things as they come. But if something shocks you, you're going to crack and it's going to be all bad all at once. Mia in this moment is eggshell fine. She's going to crash any second from just a single blunt force. And I feel like Davy might have honestly been it. Her last exertion was the perfect, like, choreography to get her new daughter, Valentina, into Ripley's hideaway. And I'm so glad that came up, but I'm so shocked that it came up the way that it did.
Really?
Yeah, I'd sort of been in the mind of, like, a home invasion or, like, people using it as an ambush spot, but this was very inventive to me. The quiet signaling of here's how to get in, the sweeping camera. It was very, very tense.
Yeah, I mean, it was very tense. Yeah, I guess when I finished 2.6, I was like, okay, like, trying to think, like, where are the kids? Okay, so the kids are, like, probably in the Nook, but then, like, like at least Valentina is definitely like hiding away in that little cubby. Yeah, I think, yeah, but like the act of getting there was definitely a lot more tense than I assumed it would have been.
It was like Mia was possessed, and she only had her like hands free to try and like go. Oh, okay, I'm under control from enemy combatants. Go that way towards defenses.
Yeah. Oh, so good.
The way that
so
her
good.
technology is described as magic, that's been I.
It's, yeah. I mean, Mia is, I mean, she's a genius in her own way, regardless of what she'd say about the matter. And yeah, her ability to just like pull everything together like that is, yeah, it's really cool. It's really good. I do want to note actually in chapters 2.6, just how fun like Carson's paranoia. Like he just can't let anything go. Like even when he's been helping Highland like take out all of these like gang members, and then Highland's like, "Oh, I need you to like distract for the drone. Like, put my like coat on and just like run." And he's like, "And now's the point that Carson's gonna shoot him in the back." And it's like, no, it's fucking not. Like, he's had like 20 opportunities before now, and like he's been shown to be like an excellent like hunter in these woods. Like, no, he would have done it way ages ago. Like, what do you mean? Now's the point that he's gonna get shot? Like,
It's interesting because, especially knowing that Carson's great skill is empathy and analysis, to have that exaggerated into a Mia scale paranoia, and he's had so much sympathy for her in that moment where it's like, there's that quote, distractions for pursuers, cars waiting in places for easy trade-offs. He wanted to embrace his wife and whisper these things to her in the same way others would whisper sweet intimacies. It's just
so good.
How do these two flirt? Like, it's contingent. Do you want contingency plans, my darling? Do you want landmines? We can do landmines. I loved your work with the garage door.
Yeah. I love them. They're perfect for each other. Yeah. It's absolutely perfect for each other. Yeah. And like, I especially like, yeah, and we like very briefly talked about it just before, but like the way that the structural, like the start of the chapter is set up structurally with Carson having been shot, and where he's just got those super short, like punchy paragraphs where it's just like gun. Because like, there's a few sentences about the gun, and then he like bounces, like his mind bounces to something else, and we get like 2 paragraphs about something completely like different. As his like they're kind of not quite bleeding out, but with a fucking gun shot through him.
Well, yeah, and
then it's just like
in
jumps
the same
back
way
to
that
gun.
he doesn't know how bad the injury is, he just knows the pain. As he's considering them, like it could be any of those. So the distress that we feel as an audience, ratchets up to be the worst option. And you can kind of take your pick from the smorgasbord. It's like a buffet. Like which do you think is the worst? Do you want a shot through lung? Do you think ribs are bad?
Horrible.
Welcome to the Wild Bow Buffet of Pain.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, so good. Like it's such a I don't know about fun. I guess I'm kind of thinking the word here is fun, but I don't think the word is fun because it's kind of horrible at the same time. But like, it's such an excellent way to have written this section. Yeah, like I don't know, it is fun, but it's also scary.
It's very impressive and on a literary level. He puts it into words as Carson likes to be effectively detached, even when things are bad, which really contextualizes how whenever Mia told him bad news in the previous chapters, he was just like, yep, okay. I guess this is happening now. And the moment that he gets hurt, we enter into this, like, what a nightmare, like these nightmarishly short paragraphs and tenseness. You have it here in your notes. Like, in all of this, his solace is thinking that nobody is going after Mia, Valentina, Ripley, and Tyr. And oh my gosh.
Yeah, I pulled that sentence out when doing my reread, because it's like, on the first read through, you go, oh yeah, thank God, like that would be so much worse. And then on the second read through, you're like, Wildbow, you piece of shit.
Betrayal.
Like, you know what you were doing there, Wildbow, making us feel safe, to only immediately rip it away from us at the end of the chapter. Oh, it's so good. Like, yeah, it's brutal, but it's such a fun line for a reread, which I love. Yeah. There's also a note here, like when they've dealt with all of the soldiers and they're like back in the bunker, and Carson is like, okay, stand with your back to the cell, like we're going to burn this place down, we're going to come and grab you. And so he gets Nicole, and then he asks Addie, and she's like, no, fuck this. And then he asks her again, and she still says no. He's like, okay. And so he just moves on to the next one. And then he doesn't think about it for like multiple paragraphs more. And it's like, when I first read it through, I was like, okay, so he's asked Addie, she's not listening. He's going to grab the other one. Then he's going to go back to Addie and be like, okay, look, last chance. But he's like, it's just done, like, for him. And then it's only when he thinks, oh, actually, if there's a skeleton, like a burned body in here, then they're probably going to like try and dig really deep on this place, and we don't want them to do that so quickly. So I guess we'll try and make sure she like comes with us. But like, it's so cold. Like, he doesn't even think about it at all, really, after he internally decides, but doesn't tell us that she's just going to die, which absolutely brutal.
We talked a lot last week about the intentionality of empathy with these characters, how it's very willful with them, and seeing it suspended in times of stress where they just don't have the resources to think or care, and really having to just push through like the material, visceral reasoning for why you have to do basic human decency. And it's the sort of thing where you can love someone for their best, and you can judge them by their worst if you wish, but I don't think anyone can be particularly kind when they've been shot. And the fact that we've had Addie sort of like pulled back on the elastic of our opinion of her with the Valentina's description of her as just annoying, and a bully. So the moment that she starts...
The biggest cunt in the universe.
Yeah, the moment that she starts giving mild resistance to Carson in this moment, in this context, I think it'd be normal for a reader just to go, fucking Addie. And like, yeah, burn her to death. Wait, what did I just say? I think it's important to dwell on the girls in this, because there is something happening off screen. There's that like a zombie Addie line, which is such strange wording. It sounds like it's code, and then when they're asked to talk louder, they suddenly are asking like, "We need to pee," like which is a normal human thing that would happen in this situation. But to turn up your conversation and suddenly it's asking for more privacy is like a very telling that they are up to something.
I think. And I was talking, so someone I've been seeing is reading the book, and I was talking to them at the end of 2.6, and I was like, okay, well, the next thing that's going to come into this, I feel like, is like Natalie and Ben, because why ratchet up like one form of tension when you can ratchet up multiple? And I really feel like that's going to happen here as well, because now this is, obviously the girls were like safe in the bunker. And then, here we get them removed from the bunker. They're in a worse spot. They're way less secure. And just like, that's such a great source of tension if they are planning something, because now we're going into, Valentina's point of view, and she doesn't know shit about this. Like, she doesn't know what's fucking happening. And so like her then having to manage that as well is so interesting.
Oh, you are...
And like such an extra good source of tension.
I'm... That's a very bold and specific prediction, but I'm hesitant to call it BS. It would be heartbreaking if in later parts of Scrape, this new arc, we had Natalie and Ben come to the house and suddenly Tyr and Ripley and Valentina and the babysitter have to get their story straight. And they have no idea what they're protecting.
Which is
oh my god, it's very like acknowledging that Natalie and Ben really do have the best of intentions as best we can tell. Perhaps not Ben. Ben might be money motivated. It's unclear yet. But like if they come to the house, it's going to be very much the "Where is your parent, little child?" Like witch at the doorstep, like Faye asking to cross the threshold, because the kids aren't going to know just how high the stakes are as this stranger shows up.
Which is I think that is something I've been thinking of a bit with these chapters, is like, this is so tense and that's fantastic and I love this tension. But like, I'm definitely looking and seeing like, okay, here's like 3 different ways we could continue to ratchet up this tension at the same time. Like, which I think
I'm looking bigger.
Forward to it. Yeah, exactly. Like, because obviously, you know, Natalie and Ben are in the background there and like they are doing stuff still. You know, they don't give a shit that some random bunker got burned down in the middle of nowhere. Like, they're still here trying to figure everything out. And then also, the girls, they're still going to be presumably trying to like get out now because they have the opportunity to, whereas in the bunker they didn't. And it's so fun seeing like this kind of degradation of the safety net around these like sources of tension. And then where is it going to go from here? I think I'm very excited for that.
You mentioned the safety net, and I'd like to pull in on a topic that I don't remember who pointed out. It was a point of discussion in the Discord, that in terms of the things going on in the story, one big component of it is that the safety of things, the security and like the fundamental elements of like what consequences will be delivered is dissolving on all fronts. Like Mia has tried to make her little bubble where like we've talked about those undermined foundations. Those are now coming due, where everything is secure and like things are protected. And it turns out Davy wants the same thing. I want security. I'd like to hire you on. But before we get that far, I stepped down recently. It's he is that same sort of savvy, calculating, and his desire is for the same thing. But if we scope out a little bit, you know, Mia has spent the whole story very concerned about Natalie and Ben discovering what's happened. But the social safety net, the mechanisms of public justice are rapidly eroding. And honestly, at this point, I'm not even sure if they are standing. She spent this whole story concerned that if the discovery is made, that's when things will come due and that's what will collapse her own bubble. But now we have Valentina and the kids possibly about to be discovered, because we know that Davy caught on to Mia's operation by seeing that her kids have no social media presence. Like he's picked up on that. So maybe Ben and Natalie might follow. If they do figure it out, there might not be consequences on a wider scale. They might just have to take it into their own hands. And the moment that it's people versus people, well, there's garage cables for that. So the way that this tension is going to be resolved as we're ratcheting up and including more and more spices in the pot, the way that this net is going to collapse is unlikely to be like an arrest. It's unlikely to be like a legal proceeding and like a court of law. It's probably going to be this level of brutal. And like I don't know if we can say for sure that the likes of Addie aren't going to get burned to death. And like the stakes at this point are that level of brutal.
Yeah, they really are, which is amazing. It's fun. Like, it's brutal, but it's so fun. I love a high stakes story. Yes. Thank you for highlighting that. So like in 3.1, we see obviously at the start that Valentina is still using the name Geo in her internal monologue. And like she's still, thinking my father. And it's only out loud that she tries to be like, oh, Davy, not my father. And then obviously we get this great moment of catharsis with the hug and the crying, and there's that really excellent moment where Mia like grabs Valentina's like wrist, and it's in such a way that like all of her muscles are standing out, and you really get that feeling of like fear that Valentina has, like that worry about like incoming abuse and violence. Mia as the clenched fist. And then she immediately goes from like this very possessive and kind of scary, really, grabbing of the wrist to just moving down and like just holding her hand and having her wrist facing up in, like a bit more of a position of vulnerability. And like the light stops catching her muscles and just makes her look a lot softer. And it's that genuine love and care that Mia has for Valentina and for all of her kids, that really helps to break down like Valentina's wall like that. And then, as she's sobbing and she thinks like, like being Mia's daughter was never discussed. Like it was just, it has to be the case. Like you will become Mia's daughter and that's the price of your safety. And so the price of this safety and love is being Valentina and not being Geo.
Which is truly the inversion of how wanting to change your name usually goes.
Very truly, yes. And yet then, so then we get the scene break, and then the next thing that we hear is Davy's voice, which is fucking horrifying.
The moment honestly. We get that catharsis. We've talked before about unreliable narrators. When I picked up this chapter, I had this hard swing away from Mia's perspective. I Geo had a really reasonable sense of like, I'm intimidated by this person. I'm scared for my safety. I didn't agree to this. This wasn't my idea, and I don't feel secure. And that perception of Mia, reading that, I was like, oh, okay, so if that's what Geo's going through, then this is a severe, like we have severely misjudged the situation. We can get this recontextualizing moment where, like earlier in Arc 2, it's Valentina that corrects Carson about what to call Davy. And we thought for a second that might have been coming from her, but actually it's coming from Mia, and she's been being corrected on it and being made to internalize it, and suddenly the initiative on her part actually is an enforcement on Mia's. And as that tension ratchets up, we have that the wrist grab, and it seems that is a true understanding of the situation. And in this, I couldn't get over how kind of creepy it was, how Mia explained it.
Yeah.
Like it's just like all the evidence is there. You are fundamentally my child, and your fictional parents will divest themselves of you. But that's a formality that has been slightly delayed by everything else going on. It's so like just slightly different tone turns that so menacing.
Yeah.
And then Valentina just decides to embrace it because it's what she needs. we've talked before
Yeah.
about how, like, in that very same scene with Carson and Valentina, wondering whether Valentina was embracing this because she genuinely wanted it or because she felt that she had to. And here is where that tension resolves, where she has decided to embrace it from both stances. Like, she is willing to pay the price of being Valentina because she genuinely does want this situation now and, like, wants to be Mia's daughter.
Yeah.
And
Which is beautiful.
it's very sweet.
Yeah.
And in classic Wild Bow style, it gets kicked right in the head right away. And
immediately.
immediately.
Really, as soon
And I'm really
perfect.
keen to see Valentina's perspective through this arc, but I'm wondering if it will be like a sort of children's arc where maybe 3.2 is from the perspective of Ripley, or we get a chapter from Tyr, or maybe from Addie. And
that could be fun.
It could be fun, but I can see Valentina doing like quite well as a perspective character for a while, because we've had this glimpse into her internal world, and we also have these dialogues that we've had, like, between her and Ripley, that have been quite tense, and like they're trying to find a mutual rhythm. They're both invested in finding it, and they just don't know each other yet, and they just have different backgrounds, so they're trying to overlap. And seeing that relationship evolve, I think, could be very interesting. But I think seeing it from both perspectives could be even more so, especially if we have the Natalie encounter this arc.
So juicy. Like, I'm just thinking, like, a Ripley point of view as we get Natalie, like, coming into the picture. Oh, that'd be so juicy.
And what if she just doesn't like her?
Yeah.
Just like
even better.
Immediately goes, you don't like the way I dress, and this reflects very poorly on you.
Yeah. Oh, and one thing I did want to, because we just talked about the Mia talking about how her kids are fundamentally hers, you know, with all of the evidence, like the birth certificate and everything. But we see on, like, the phone conversation that, like, Davy already knows the names of Ripley and Tyr, and has, you know, just stalked them on, like, social media to find the small, tiny scraps that are there. And I just love, like, how Mia is talking about how all of her kids are fundamentally hers, and, like, that Valentina will be soon too. And yet it's through this, like, this fundamental, I don't want to say ownership, because I don't think that's how Mia thinks about her kids, but it's kind of close. But like that fundamental ownership that, you know, Davy and people that have nefarious purposes and lots of contacts can get this information, so that if she had done this a lot faster, then Valentina would have been found, because it would have been like all of her birth certificate and everything would have been under Mia's name. Yeah, and it's just, I don't know. I really like that difference where Mia is talking about how she wants Valentina to be fundamentally, you know, her child and have all of the legal documents in place. But then also, if she had done that, that would have basically meant that she would have been found out, like, straight away, you know? Which I think is just, it's a really interesting little disconnect. I think it's fun.
We both know I love puns.
Absolutely.
And Pale has a nomenclature that is very punny, which is claim. Where ownership over something, when you claim it, is also an argument. It is a claim. Like, I am proclaiming that it is mine. And the way you accomplish that is with evidence. And you have to make a complete argument for why it should be yours. Capital C, claim. And I like Mia's need to have a heavy claim, like a confident one that cannot be questioned, is like, as you were saying, if she had just had Geo in her house and it's just some kid that she's sheltering, there wouldn't be evidence to follow. And maybe if she went through a song and dance of adopting Ripley and Tyr through the foster care system, maybe that would have let them live full and socialized online lives and given less of a red flag. But the nature of her paranoia that requires a supporting narrative that has no holes in it and has no weaknesses, normal people don't have that. No, it's not an average situation to have an airtight persona. And
yeah, exactly.
To have a flaw in the negative, why is there no evidence for this? Did someone clean up the evidence? That sort of thinking it's very hamartia. It's very tragic flaw. The attempt to evade the prophecy brings it about. And it's such an empathetic approach as well. Because if your great strength can also be your great weakness if taken too far, then you can be a lot more forgiving when someone volunteers the wrong answer because it might have been the right one if they just did it a little less. Suddenly it's a question of balancing it out and finding the correct quantity, not necessarily the quality of your solution. So to have the same strength be the weakness is heartbreaking, but also very endearing, and makes these characters not out to be weak or stupid. It's the same things that carried them forward that got them here.
Yeah, very well put. So I do want to talk about, there's this beautiful moment, which I'm sure everyone will remember because it's fantastic, where Valentina is in the secret room and just trying to distract herself kind of so she doesn't fall asleep, but also calm herself down a little bit so she doesn't have a panic attack in there, where she spells out her own name through the idea of these European streets that Mia brought up. And then she finishes doing her own, and then she thinks about, what would Ripley's look like? And so she kind of imagines a little Ripley neighborhood spelling out Ripley's name. And, it's very thematic to who Ripley is and kind of how Valentina sees Ripley. And then the same with Tia. And I think, Tier's is very cool, and, bringing in the cigarette smoke as kind of an aesthetic because French and everyone smokes in France, apparently. But then you look back and you see Ripley's is very evocative of who she is, and Tier's is very evocative of how Valentina thinks about him as this short burst of energy, which is pretty accurate. But then Valentina's doesn't have any personality at all. She even notes, when she's thinking about like putting a something in there for the A, I think it was. And she's like, what should go here? Should be a garden or a fountain, or, and then she just kind of like leaves it hanging. Like, so she's still very much, trying to think of herself as this blank slate that doesn't have a personality, which is, I don't know, it's sad, but it's fascinating.
Sort of relevant to how Mia has been insisting that she must become Valentina thoroughly, and like on a deep level that she doesn't need to perform nearly so much, but she couldn't be recognized as Geo in that condition. So we see that she's at a tabula rasa sort of state now. She's not ready just yet to be intuitively Valentina, because she doesn't know who that is.
Yeah, like Valentina doesn't exist as a person. She just kind of exists as a name at the moment and as a member of a family unit. But there's no personality there yet. And that's just, that's really interesting to think about, and maybe to like look back on at the end of the arc and say, well, how has Valentina grown over this arc? How does she think about herself now? Yeah. And also there's this fantastic moment, like right at the end of the chapter, where Valentina just says that, we'll have to wait for the dead drop stuff to activate, such that like she can continue coordinating like this attack on the Cavalcantis, so that it doesn't look like Mia and Carson are the masterminds, which I thought was just a very cool moment.
Now that you've had
very, very 3
days of training.
Yeah, exactly.
We pass the torch on to you.
So good.
In the case of Valentina inheriting the fight and being ready to take on the Cavalcantis and the kitchen, this chapter, Davy's monologues, really does not give us so much hope for what the opposition is going to be capable of. The satellites and AI being used thanks to the gifts from evil Santa Claus, the politician apparently in contact with the civil warriors, like quite openly, that sort of stochastic terrorism of like, someone should really do a horrible evil thing to those people. Oh, someone did it? Oh, what a coincidence.
Someone should do something about this problem. And then the problem is just gay people being alive.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was pretty dark.
I mean, it is the example of the day. I love it when a heavy, dark, and deeply traumatic thing is just constantly the conversation of every news day, and you just sort of walk down the road and like go like do your commute and like see your friends, and just every once in a while someone throws a full Coke can at your head from a moving car. The thing that I wanted to get into for it is just like more as a bold and specific prediction. We have Davy saying like, I'm the nice guy. Like I'm gonna hire you because I want security. If my brother Nicholas were here, my goodness, you'd be tortured and butchered and it'd be terrible. I had this moment where I thought that the comparison to Santa Claus, that politician, and the older brother being called Nicholas, I was like, oh, they have Saint Nicholas and Santa Claus on their side. How are we ever supposed to compete?
It's a secret Christmas story. How beautiful!
What are they cooking in the kitchen? Oh my goodness! Whatever
maybe
became
maybe
of
Claw will end on December 25th.
Yeah,
I'm calling. That's my bold and specific prediction. Claw's ending on Christmas this year.
It's like Die Hard. It's a Christmas serial.
Exactly.
I would absolutely love to watch the what's the word, watch the Claw cinema adaptation.
Yeah.
But specifically as a Christmas movie, because it is basically Home Alone at this point. This is going to be the Home Alone arc.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
Except instead of, oh no, we left our kid at home, it's going to be, oh no, we were kidnapped and now our kid has to save us.
Yeah. Using this secret set of traps that we've built into the house. But they're not like wholesome traps. They're like, if you step on this step wrong, like a spear stabs out and instantly kills you.
I mean, those Home Alone traps were like crippling, lifelong injuries, if not like concussive enough to absolutely give someone brain damage or kill them. That was just the kind of slapstick comedy of the time. So glad to be bringing that back in the 2020s.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Claw Arc 3 slapstick comedy arc.
Yeah, like Natalie walks in and like just an egg falls onto her head. It's a metaphor.
Whoa. And then she trips and falls back out the door.
Oh no! It's so slippery in this incredibly hot environment where snow could never fall because of climate change. Oh golly.
That'll be a good arc. I'm looking forward to it.
Of course, we have a new arc, Scrape, and I'd love to take this chance to talk about the meaning of the new arc and of Claw in general. but just to start with scrape, we have the nouns. We have injury, battle. It might be that when Natalie slips and falls, she'll get a scrape. Oh no, what a horrible injury. And of course, they usually hurt because they're like peeled skin, but not necessarily lethal. Which, like, we're about to get into a couple of scrapes, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Or just scrape through. And of course, it's a verb. You might be you might scrape by. You might get scraped by something. But within talking about it as a verb, claw is a verb. And we skipped over it, but in the last episode, where we got to have that,
fucked up, folks.
We had that flashback to how the Carson and Mia meet cute. And there is this verbatim description of Mia clawing for Tyr, and the moment that it looks like Carson will walk away. And a close friend of mine really unpacked this idea that central to the characters in this story is the question of what they are clawing for in that savage kind of need way of, like, they're like the fingers are sharp, right? Like they might damage the very thing they're trying to get in the process of clawing for it. And we have Davy and Mia's of security, but for Mia, it's security for her family and having a family, and like making sure that sort of, like, we're not quite certain at the core of the motivation. It's probably lots of things, but there's a degree of it being like ending the cycle of abuse, making sure that her kids grow up to have a better life and time than she did, and we have what Carson is clawing for, which is Mia, but in the sense of deciphering her and finding that stability, and to have our sort of our partners in crime are leading to, and our antagonist Davy, all clawing for security in a world that is rapidly collapsing, is just I truly do believe it's the core of Claw. The looking through that lens at other characters and trying to tease out what might be that they're clawing for, Bolden seems to want to be just left alone, or to have some variety of peace, and again, that's security. Max seems to want companionship in the like the way that he touched
and
on
Mia,
he does, like, Carson and he have that exact in common. They're both clawing for Mia. Valentina clawing for a new identity, safety from her father, and Tyr and Ripley are in this state of innocence where they don't really want, need, or like require or struggle for anything in particular. We have the note in 3.1 of Tyr waking up his sister just so that they can walk to the bathroom together in the middle of the night. And it seems that he might be afraid of the dark, but then he rushes off the moment that Valentina is awake, and the two of them speculate. They're not quite sure why he did that. Maybe he just wanted company. Maybe he just wanted to show off. And that sort of fundamental childish, like, oh, I just want to impress. Oh, I just want to be loud. Oh, I just want to have fun. Is like it's sort of the complement to clawing for things, where instead of needing to be savage about it, needing to like be like desperately reaching, you can just sort of offer a hand and like have it held, and there be like no need to scrape or rip into things. So going into scrape, this childish sort of injury, this childish sort of way of injuring, not a battle, not a brawl, but a little scrape like you might have in the playground. that's part of why I think this is going to be the kids arc, because if that bubble of innocence is going to pop anytime, it's going to be an out.
Yeah. Very true. Very well put. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, the crime counter, the rap sheet. As of chapter 1 and 2, there is. I'm confident that Mia has at least 75 years in prison, 1 life sentence, and $6,600 of fines to pay.
Yeah, she's doing good.
However, I've realized that I need to maybe cover 3 or 4 jurisdictions of how things would be legislated in Tasmania and in New South Wales and in Canada, but specifically, like, probably might be worthy to go like the I'm not sure if I should do the Vancouver area or like the Montreal area. Because like, there's quite the gap, and then the entirety of the U.S. Like, and I got to pick one of the stars in the flag. So, or do I go to like a federal analysis? I've been having a lot of trouble with it, and I want it to be in a good state before I share it to the community. Right now, I've been organizing things as individual sheets, of like, here's Mia's sheet, here's Carson's sheet. Couple of trackers that summarize the data. It's slow going, and I have been busy on performances this last week. So it'll happen. It's coming eventually. Hopefully, I think maybe next Reflections episode, not the one that we'll be releasing for Arc 2, but the one after for Arc 3, we might have something substantive to share.
Fingers crossed. Yeah. Looking forward to seeing that as it's continuing to be worked on, because it's very cool at the moment, but it does seem like a hell of a lot of work.
It's a big task. I can see why people make this their job.
Yeah, that's fair. Do we want to do our BS predictions?
Absolutely. I've shared some of mine. I think, like, my bold and specific prediction, I think this is the kids arc. I think that the order might be, like, if we have had Val, then it might be Ripley. We could have. I'd be very surprised at what we get for Tyr. But then if it's going to be about the same length and we're going to have different perspectives each time, it could be then Addie and the other Cavalcanti kids over in the hostage house. And then if that were the case, if we had individual chapters, individual perspectives, we could then have a general mercenaries arc, where we like see something from Spence's perspective and something from Max's perspective. And the reason I say that is because Max and Spence do a meet cute at the poorly stocked hostage location. Oh my goodness, they were guard mates.
They were guard mates. I can't wait. This is the ship track, like, of the entire podcast, of the entire story. Like, we're just going to be tracking how Max and Spence go together.
I had this realization that Bolden had this whole spiel to Carson when he was shot and bleeding out, and he was like freaking out about this being the end, where he referred to his name as so strange because he only sees it on paperwork. And it took me until very recently to click on to, of course, because it's not his original name. He's been resettled.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just had this sort of meet cute, adorable moment, because we have this focus of names, especially here in this chapter for Valentina, and as like going away from Geo. Just the idea of the two of them like talking about their old life and like telling them each other what like their old names were and whether they would like whether they miss those names and whether they wish they didn't have to resettle and move on.
Cute.
And I think that'd be really cute because they have something to bond over. And I'm trying to be normal about this because if it happens, then I get to read it, and if it doesn't happen, I have to resist the temptation to put a fanfic to it. for possibly the rest of my life, or just cave immediately. So, it's a struggle. It's a struggle.
Yeah,
but that's my
I guess,
prediction.
Yeah, I guess part of what we should really say there is that if you want to write the Max and Spence or the Bolden and Highland or whatever their original names were, /fic, then let us know that it's happening, okay? Because, I'll read it.
Are you referring to the vaunted sex fic?
Yeah, the sex fic.
Oh my goodness, sex fic.
I'll read it.
I am.
Even if it's not a sex fic, even if it's just like
it's
some wholesome.
I'm not really. I'm more of a sappy rom-com reader. But I just the knowing that would exist would just bring me so much comedic joy, because I'd be able to say to people, "Have you read the sex fic?" and just break down for a solid minute and a half in laughter.
Yeah, there we go. So someone out there who's listening, we believe in you.
Be the change that I want to see in the world.
Exactly. So for my BS prediction this week, I think that Valentina is going to find one of the hidden gun stashes, or maybe all of them, in the house, and then she's going to learn from her Uncle Highland, and she's going to go just like full Highland on her ex-father's gang and take down the whole kitchen and rescue her parents, and that'll be the rest of our story. I'm excited.
We've considered the Home Alone angle, but we really should further consider the Die Hard angle.
Yeah, she's going to go full Die Hard and save everybody. It's going to be awesome. I'm so keen.
Now, we don't know if Valentina has ever held a gun before, or if growing up in the Mafia led to any sort of self-defense training. But, how hard can it be?
How hard can it be?
It's fiction. We can do whatever, right?
Yeah. I believe in Valentina's strength and ability.
If we just throw a time skip in there,
Yeah, time skip, 1 week long training montage. I think she's got this.
It's a question of dedication. How much does she really want her parents to be safe?
Yeah, if she doesn't go out there and do it herself, did she really want it in the first place? Does she deserve it?
This is the true theme of Claw.
That's a fucked up thing.
And my other bold and specific prediction that I've thought of just now is that we're talking about Christmas movies. There will be a reference to the Santa Claus, where the elected the elected official that is representing the civil warriors, who resembles Santa Claus if he was fired, explains who has now taken the mantle of Santa Claus. And why that has led him to his military endeavors. And that's when this abruptly changes from a sort of spec-fic, apocalyptic dystopia setting to the hidden magical setting that's been there the whole time.
Amazing.
We're looking forward to that.
I'm excited. Yeah. Okay, so I guess it's time for our discussion question. So last week, we asked,
what would be your priorities if our world ends up where Claus is?
Or if that's too heavy, if you had a spy satellite, what would you use it for? And I guess the funny thing is that, so we had a couple of answers here and everybody answered both questions. So I guess it wasn't too heavy to answer the first one.
Hey, sugar, a spoonful of sugar helps medicine go down.
I guess so. Okay, so my tallest says, for the first discussion question, that he would make sure to stockpile seizure and transplant medicine for one kid, and canned corn, beef hash, and microwavable burritos for the other kid. And his second discussion question answer is he would use his spy satellite for seeing when I wake up so he can start immediately pinging me to do my live read. And then in full caps, he says, not inappropriately, my privacy will otherwise be respected.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate. Thank you.
I did appreciate that not only did he say it there, but also reiterated it in the Discord, just to be absolutely certain.
Yes. Please do respect my privacy, if you have a spy satellite or not, I guess. And he says otherwise maybe he'd just see where his kid's bus is at so he doesn't have to sit on the porch for half an hour waiting for them to get home.
And FYI, my Tolos, the answer is about 7:40 a.m. So you're living the dream. Not me reading the timestamps on the Discord conversation.
That's not respecting my privacy very much.
Hey, I can edit out of the video if you'd like.
No, it's fine.
Sweet Manzana said, I can't imagine what my country would be like if the United States was like it is in Claw. Probably not good. There's a big chance I would move to another country if possible. Very understandable. And
yeah, that's pretty reasonable.
For question 2, there's nothing I would personally do with it. Maybe I could make money by lending it to people, but it feels like a tool only useful for criminals, the government, or creeps doing sus shit. I have a friend that I once saw use an app to track his girlfriend while she was walking the dog to make sure she didn't go to a park he thought was too far or dangerous. When she got home, he complained about it. I wouldn't lend a spy satellite to him. Me either. Good call.
Yeah, me either. Very good call. That's not a good way to interact with your partners.
Yeah,
and people that
gotta respect privacy.
Ostensibly trust.
Definitely don't read timestamps off of a Discord conversation.
That would be so rude.
Yeah.
So 40i2 says, for the first question, as great as Wildbow's settings are to read about, if our world ends up as any of them, they're out, except maybe for the Otherverse, if they weren't aware how bad it gets. Granted, we've only seen a small glimpses of the Clawverse, so it might turn out to only be mildly horrific. But the Upstairs Movie Company and Davy's Hobby don't give them much confidence. Which, yeah, I mean, the Upstairs Movie Company, I don't think we talked about it that much because it was fucking horrific.
Yeah, sometimes a bag is labeled "Dead Dove, Do Not Eat," and you open it and you don't really know what you expected.
Yeah.
Like, how much is there to analyze there, really?
Yeah, not a lot, except for to say, oh my god, that was horrible. And for their second answer, they say they'd use it for profit. You can actually order satellite pictures of chosen areas today, even as a private individual. That's horrifying. Satellite imaging is a multi-billion-dollar market today, and it has lots of clandestine uses. No need to get involved with the likes of Davy. One satellite isn't too much, but it's presumably already in orbit. The only serious upkeep cost is the communication bandwidth. They probably wouldn't be able to ever launch a replacement, so just use it while it lasts. And commercial satellites have limited quality, so a quote-unquote spy satellite would offer better resolution, active sensors to see through clouds, etc. It should do very well for them on the market. So, do we want to answer this week's discussion question as well?
Yes. Since I did bring it up, I think it's worth lifting the heavy question myself. I think I have Mia's problem exactly, which is that I would love to have security for the people I love, but I have a lot of altruistic guilt of like feeling bad just because I'm not doing more good. And I think I would be probably in amongst the protests to as best of my legs can allow. But for the satellite question, I actually recalled a good answer while we were talking through, especially for 40i2's question, 40i2's answer, which is, do you know what Kessler's syndrome is?
I feel like I've heard of it, but I might just be recognizing the name Kessler from something.
So I'm pulling directly from my memory here. I had one really splendid conversation about it earlier in the week with with a good friend, and they were talking about Kessler syndrome because essentially when you're in space, everything's moving at like 8 kilometers a second. It's like incredibly high speed, and it's like this quiet projectile maze. And every time a bit of cosmic garbage hits something else, it splinters into more pieces. And Kessler's syndrome is this sort of Wall-E final point where all the space junk has eviscerated itself until there's just this fine film of eviscerating razor blade dust that coats the planet's orbit.
Yeesh.
And if you reach that point, you can't have satellites because the satellite place has been saturated like a stormy desert. There's a space storm And if a planet has Kessler's syndrome, like that's the end of internet on the planet. You can't have things in orbit around it to do the sort of things we do. So if I had access to a satellite, I would probably be cleaning up space junk. I would.
That's awesome.
I don't know how you catch something that is the size of a grain of sand and is moving at 8 kilometers a second without immediately destroying whatever net you're using to catch and making more space junk. But I quite like the internet, and I also am really just appalled by the notion of a planet getting sick, catching Kessler's syndrome. Imagine imagine being told that Earth had caught Kessler's syndrome, and you look out from the space, and it's just it's got a fog around it that eviscerates you. If you look up from ground level, the stars are twinkling like planets because things keep getting in the way. Yeah. And eventually that might accrete into a Saturn disk, and that would be very cool. But if I had access to a satellite, I would be cleaning up the orbit because that's important to me.
That's a good answer. My answer is a little less good. I think if I had a spy satellite, I'd probably just do the same thing as 40i2 and just try and use it for profit. Just make some extra money.
Get money.
And, try and be, slightly less poor.
Very reasonable.
Although I'm sure you could make decent money with it. Fuck, you might, maybe even I'd just sell it.
Hey, yeah. I mean, you've gone to all the trouble of getting it up there. It's yours now.
Yeah,
why spend the time using it when you can spend it?
Yeah.
Premium currency satellites are.
Yeah. I do think for my answer for your discussion question about what I would do if our world was in a similar level to Claw's, I think I'd join the protests.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the kind of the right thing to do, even if it's terrifying with the private police and everything. Oof.
Aye.
Okay, so our discussion question for this week is...
What would your name look like as a neighborhood? Valentina's
so kind of
visual.
like how Valentina. Yeah. Walk us through it. And look, if you don't want to do your own name, maybe your screen name, or, I don't know, maybe a main character of Claw or something like that, or just a character you like. But it would be cool if you did your own name.
I think this is a great opportunity to talk about city planning, which is not a special interest that I've indulged in a while, but I will absolutely be talking about walkable streets.
Excellent. All right, so thanks everyone for listening. Go check out Wildbow's Patreon at patreon.com/wildbow. This is his secret government-supported mafia. We've just been kidnapped and put in a recording booth.
You don't need to help us. I'm just blinking really hard for an unrelated reason. Please give us a rating and review on the podcatcher of your choice.
And if you want to chat to us about the show or follow along with live reads, check out our channel on the Doof Media Discord. Find the invite link at doofmedia.com/discord.
I'd say we'd see you next week, but we actually have our reflecting episode coming up, our interrogation
episode
of Arc 2. So hope to see you there.
Yeah. All right. Ciao.
Bye for now.